Podcast, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to roll-out facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on. The Bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation.
And today, we're diving deep into a feature piece that's been generating some serious buzz, really getting folks talking.
Yeah, it really is.
This one's got layers and some, frankly, shocking quantification that is going to make you rethink how you've been approaching your bottom line. We are talking about money that is disappearing from your farm before you even get your milk check.
That's right. We are tackling that persistent, grinding frustration every dairyman and woman feels. You know, when your cows are healthy, your quality is excellent, your costs are, well, high, and yet the market price for milk just refuses to budge.
It feels like you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. It really does.
Absolutely. A Wisconsin dairyman really nailed the core issue for us when he said, and I quote, "I can handle weather variability, disease cycles, and even normal market cycles. We've done that for generations. What's impossible to navigate is when other governments are actively supporting our competitors."
That quote just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It highlights that feeling of fighting an invisible enemy.
Exactly.
You know, you can invest in genetics, you can tighten up your feed conversion rate, maybe improve your parlor efficiency, all things you can control on your farm.
Right.
But how in the world do you design an operation to compete with the Treasury of the European Union or the People's Republic of China?
Well, the answer, as the data shows.
Yeah, the answer is you can't.
Yeah.
It's just not possible based on this.
And the data we have here provides a truly shocking quantification of that frustration. This isn't just a feeling, it's a measurable financial loss. Cornell's Andrew Novakovic and his team ran some really comprehensive modeling.
Novakovic, yeah, he does solid work.
He does, and it suggests foreign subsidies might be extracting approximately $90 to $100 per cow annually from U.S. operations just through persistent price suppression.
Wait, $90 to $100 per cow. That sounds, well, it sounds high, even for a cynical farmer like me.
I know, right?
But let's put that into barn-level terms for you, the listener. For a standard 500-cow dairy, which is still the backbone in many states, we're talking about $45,000 to $50,000 in potential annual revenue that just vanishes. Poof, gone.
It just never shows up in the milk check.
Never shows up. And here's the crucial detail. It's not a management error on your part. You can't stop this loss by changing your milking procedure or, lowering your component score.
Yeah.
It is a structural leak built right into the global system.
And what's key, as the source material points out, is the consistency of this loss. It holds across the board.
Right.
Whether you're running a smaller 200-cow pasture operation up in the Northeast, maybe dealing with those thin organic margins.
Yeah, tough business.
Or if you're milking 2,500 head in a big, high-volume dry lot out west, that price suppression is remarkably consistent.
Which is why this issue is systemic. It impacts every single segment of the U.S. dairy economy.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Absolutely. And the stakes couldn't be higher. We are currently losing, on average, 3 dairy farms every single day.
3 a day. Just think about that.
If that $90 to $100 per cow is the tipping point for solvency for some operations, and for many it is,
It had to be.
then this foreign subsidy mechanism is directly accelerating the industry's consolidation. No question.
So today we're going to break down the exact, complex, bureaucratic mechanisms creating this tilted playing field.
Yeah.
And we're going to quantify what it is costing you, cow by cow, hundredweight by hundredweight.
Okay, let's unpack this core problem then. Let's start by quantifying that hidden tax.
Right, the hidden tax. I like that term.
The actual price suppression is subtle. It's often masked by the normal, often wild volatility we see daily in dairy commodities.
One day it's up 50 cents.
The next week it's down 75. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Roller coaster.
But when the economists flatten out the averages and look at the structural impact, they were able to put a solid number on it. $0.05 to $0.40 per hundredweight suppression.
Okay, 35 to 40 cents. I need to anchor that number in reality, though. Most farmers don't feel a 35-cent hit on a single country rate.
But no, not really.
They feel the cumulative weight of that on the entire herd over the whole year.
That's what hurts.
So when we use USDA data for the standard production average, let's use 240 hundredweight annually per cow. That's a pretty common number.
Well, that's about right.
You can see how quickly this compounds. Multiply that 35 to 40 cent impact by 240, and you are immediately looking at $85 to $95 missing per cow every single year.
85 to 95 bucks per cow.
That is why we call it the vanishing dairy dollar. It just disappears.
And the numbers scale up so quickly, which is why the impact is felt so differently depending on your farm's structure.
Totally.
If you're a 200 cow operation, that's what, $17,000 to $19,000 missing annually?
17 to 19 grand. Okay, think about what that covers. That's enough to cover the labor costs for one full-time employee for several months. Or maybe the annual maintenance on your primary loader.
Or that TMR mixer repair you've been putting off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the difference between replacing a critical piece of equipment or, duct taping it back together for another year. We've all been there.
Scale that to a mid-sized 500 cow dairy. Now you're looking at $42,500 to $47,500 missing.
42 to 47,000. And a 1,000 cow operation is losing $85,000 to $95,000.
And for a larger 2,500 cow facility, that loss balloons. It's anywhere from $212,000 to $237,000 annually. Just gone.
$250,000 basically. Vanished.
Now, a producer might look at those massive numbers and say, well, the market fluctuates anyway. I've seen worse swings.
Sure, we've all weathered storms.
But here's the perspective check that really drives home the crisis. Most operations, even in truly good years, are running profit margins. That is, the actual money left over after all expenses and, owner draws of maybe $200 to $400 per cow, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good year. A really good year.
Sure, if that $90 to $100 loss per cow is accurate.
Which the data suggests it is.
You need to realize that this structural disadvantage represents 25% to nearly 50% of your entire potential profit margin.
Wow. Okay, stop right there. 25 to 50% of the profit.
Yeah.
Gone.
That's not a fluctuation you can manage by getting an extra 1/10 of a point on components. That is the difference between genuine, sustainable profitability and constantly struggling just to break even.
It's the entire cushion gone.
It's the margin you need to handle that unforeseen jump in soybean prices, right?
Exactly. Or the sudden need for a replacement silo unloader that just died.
Yeah.
That money is the difference between solvency and chronic stress on the balance sheet. And ultimately, that's the capital you rely on for repairs, for modernization.
And for convincing the next generation that the dairy is actually a viable business for them to take on, that's huge.
It really is. Without that margin, the future looks pretty bleak.
So we've established the cost, a devastating $90 to $100 per cow annually. But that number is just the symptom. Right. Now let's go to the root cause. How are global competitors able to undercut us by that crucial $35.40 per hundredweight?
Yeah, how's it actually happening?
It's not just one government. We have two very different but equally powerful mechanisms at play globally.
First, there's the behemoth of the European Union intervention system.
Ah, yes. The EU intervention. This is kind of the historical distortion, the one that makes everyone scratch their heads because it's so bureaucratic.
So complex.
But it's brutally effective at setting a global floor price.
Precisely. The EU uses an intervention purchasing system. When prices for key products, specifically butter and skim milk, powder drop to a predetermined intervention price threshold.
Which they set
themselves, yes.
Yeah.
The EU bureaucracy steps in and buys up massive volumes of that product, just takes it off the market and puts it into storage, government storage.
And the key detail that needs to be understood here is the trigger. This isn't spontaneous, right? They have these price thresholds set.
And once the market dips beneath that level, usually sustained for a specific period, the EU is basically obligated to buy. By removing hundreds of thousands of metric tons of product, they literally prevent the global market from finding its natural clearing price. They artificially hold prices above where they would naturally settle.
Essentially, they are creating a subsidized floor under their own producers. They're ensuring their farmers rarely suffer a prolonged collapse in commodity pricing.
Which sounds nice for them.
But because the EU is such a massive global player in exporting milk powder and butter, that floor affects every producer on the planet, including you listening in Wisconsin or California or anywhere else in the U.S.
Right. Their floor becomes our ceiling. in a way. And this system has historical precedent, too. We've all heard the stories, right? The butter mountain and the milk powder lake the EU created decades ago.
Oh, yeah. Legendary stuff.
That was a direct result of this system. And it's not just us, the external critics, pointing this out. The EU's own court of auditors,
Their own auditors.
their own people, called this system destabilizing and market distorting back in 2021. They estimated the cost of maintaining this supply management structure runs into the billions of euros annually. Billions.
And closer to home, Mark Stephenson at the University of Wisconsin estimates that these EU interventions are costing U.S. dairy producers hundreds of millions of dollars annually in lost competitiveness.
Hundreds of millions. Just from that one mechanism.
Okay, so that's the EU mechanism, a structural price floor that basically sets the global expectation artificially high. Then you have the Chinese mechanism.
Completely different beast.
Completely different, but just as lethal to our competitiveness because it focuses right on the point of sale.
This is where they use export subsidies disguised as tax breaks, essentially giving their processors a massive government-funded discount to offer international buyers. It's sneaky.
It is. They offer VAT rebates, value-added tax to processors exporting dairy from these special economic zones.
And VAT is a big deal over there.
Huge. We are talking about rebates ranging from 8 to 13% back. And this isn't some old, forgotten policy. It was recently expanded through their State Council Directive 2024-15.
Okay, so that directive signals it's a targeted, formalized policy expansion aimed squarely at increasing their dairy export growth. They're doubling down.
Exactly. They want a bigger piece of the pie.
So let's put that into plain English for the farmer listening. Let's say a U.S. processor bids $100 per unit for milk powder in a market like Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
The Chinese competitor can effectively bid 87 to 92 tolls for that exact same powder, and their processor is still getting the same effective revenue back home. Why? Because the government picks up the 8 to 13% difference through the rebate.
It gives them an automatic government-funded 8 to 13% price advantage instantly when bidding against U.S. suppliers in key global markets like Nigeria, Mexico, or Saudi Arabia.
And this advantage has absolutely nothing to do with whether the Chinese farm is more efficient or has better components or has a lower cost of production. Zero.
It's pure policy leverage, government muscle.
The Idaho producer quoted in the source material summed up the sheer frustration perfectly. He said, "We can match anybody on production metrics. Our feed conversion is world-class. Our genetics are top tier.
Things we control.
But when their government picks up 13% of the tab, that's a whole different ball game. And that is the harsh reality check.
It really is.
We are not losing on quality or efficiency. We are losing because we're competing with a national budget, not another farm business."
Now we shift from the theory and the policy down to the ground level. Let's move to the Michigan case study.
Michigan. Yeah, this hits close to home for a lot of folks in the Midwest.
This is where the loss of specific export contracts was directly documented by a major dairy cooperative, turning that abstract 35-cent per hundredweight loss into a brutal drop in the actual milk check.
This is where the abstraction of global trade becomes a very real pay cut. You see it on the statement. The Michigan co-ops lost significant contracts for dairy commodities when Algerian buyers shifted their sourcing, moved from the U.S. to Europe.
Now, that seems like a normal market shift on paper, right?
Yeah.
Buyer changes supplier.
Happens all the time.
But the analysis proves it was entirely structural. It wasn't about price based on efficiency.
So why did they switch?
This is where that trade structure tangle becomes crystal clear. It exposes how different policies layer on top of each other to create an impossible situation. The reason those Algerian buyers shifted is that the EU has a comprehensive trade agreement with Algeria.
Okay.
It allows European dairy products to enter Algeria duty-free. Zero tariffs. Zip.
Zero tariffs for the EU and for us.
Meanwhile, U.S. exports face tariffs of 25% or more to enter that exact same market.
25%. So hold on. We're already competing with the EU's domestic price floor, which artificially depresses the starting global price.
Right. Step one, disadvantage.
And then we stack a 25% tariff on top of our price just to get into the country.
Correct.
We literally cannot compete. It's impossible.
Yeah.
The European powder is delivered at prices the U.S. cannot possibly match, even if we were the most efficient producer in the entire world.
The economic consequences are immediate and severe. When those export contracts vanish and these contracts absorb a significant volume of milk from member farms,
Crucial volume.
the co-op suddenly has all this excess product. It has to be sold domestically, maybe at a lower price, or stored, which costs money. Either way, it drives down the overall blend price for every member.
And Phil Durst from Michigan State Extension, he's tracked this impact, right?
Yes, he has. His work shows that when a co-op loses those critical export contracts, milk prices can drop more than $1 per hundredweight for the member farms.
More than $1 per hundredweight. A buck drop in the blend price is catastrophic. I mean, that's just devastating.
It forces producers to make immediate, drastic choices. Culling 10 to 15% of the herd is a common response, just to survive the cash flow crisis.
Selling off good cows just to stay afloat.
Exactly. And if the co-op can't find a home for the volume long term, it threatens the viability of the processing plant itself.
Which removes a huge local market for producers in that area. It's a domino effect.
A devastating one. And once again, we come back to the quality paradox. That Michigan producer who was ultimately hurt by these foreign trade policies was doing everything right on the farm.
Yeah, the quote was something like,
"Our somatic cell count runs under 150,000 consistently. Our components are excellent and we're on top of herd health."
doing everything by the book, top-notch management.
But then they said, but being good at your job has limits when the playing field's this tilted.
That just says it all, doesn't it? It's a perfect illustration that excellence in farming is not enough to survive structural economic warfare. You can't manage your way out of this specific problem.
This constant hidden $90-$100 per cow loss fundamentally changes the capital crisis for every farm, regardless of size. It really changes investment viability.
Which is probably the most concerning long-term implication, because that dictates who survives the next decade, who can reinvest, who can modernize.
This is the lending problem, and it directly relates to financial literacy, or maybe just the hard reality of bankrolls. We all know that agricultural lenders base their decisions on debt service coverage ratios, right? DSCR.
DSCR. Yeah, the bank lives and dies by that number.
Hold on, let's just quickly define DSCR for the listener. Because while they deal with lenders daily, they might not know the exact term or how it's calculated.
Good idea.
DSCR is essentially how many times your net operating income covers your required debt payments for the year. So if a lender requires a DSCR of, say, 1.25,
which is pretty standard,
it means for every dollar you owe them in payments that year, you must prove you are earning $1.25 in net operating income before those payments.
Exactly. Lenders use a tight margin there. They need that cushion.
Yeah.
So if that $45,000 for a 500-cow dairy is missing annually due to this price suppression we're talking about,
Right, that $90 per cow.
that revenue leak drastically shrinks your net operating income. And because of those DSCR rules and the leverage requirements banks have, that missing $45,000 can easily translate to $200,000 less total borrowing capacity on a major capital project.
$200,000 less borrowing power.
The bank just says, look, we see the missing margin, we see the risk from these trade issues, and we just can't take that risk.
$200,000 less borrowing capacity might not sound like a lot in, corporate America.
Pocket change for some companies.
Well, but on a farm, that is the new $400,000 parlor upgrade becoming a $200,000 patchwork repair job. Or that's the difference between being able to modernize your manure management system and suddenly falling behind on environmental regulations.
Huge difference. And the case study of the 3,200 cow operator near Tulare, California, proves this with hard numbers, quantifiable metrics.
Right. The one looking at robotic.
Startup operator.
Right.
She was analyzing a robotic milking system upgrade. A massive capital expense, obviously, but one meant to ensure long-term efficiency and, frankly, appeal to the next generation workforce.
Big investment, big potential payoff.
So she calculated the internal rate of return, the IRR.
And for those unfamiliar, the internal rate of return, IRR, is just the expected annual rate of profit you get back, expressed as a percentage, relative to the initial capital investment. It's what banks use to see if an investment is actually worthwhile financially.
Correct. Her analysis showed that the difference between current subsidized pricing, the reality today, and a scenario with even partial relief from foreign subsidies.
Just getting some of that $1.35 back.
Yeah, just part of it. That difference changed the IRR on the robotic parlor by nearly 40%. 40%.
Wow.
The subsidy pressure made the projected profitability look thin and highly risky over the 10-year lifespan of a loan.
And that 40% shift in IRR was the literal difference between her lender approving the project under favorable terms
Giving her the green light.
and denying it altogether. Full stop. No loan.
It demonstrates that the economic viability of modernizing U.S. dairies is being directly manipulated by foreign policy happening thousands of miles away. It handcuffs our ability to invest and remain competitive. Simple as that.
And if you can't invest, you can't modernize. And if you can't modernize, the farm becomes less appealing to the next generation.
Exactly. Iowa State Extension data has tracked this correlation clearly. When margins look persistently thin and the debt load required to take over the operation remains incredibly high.
Which it always is.
The kids with ag degrees, they start looking elsewhere. They look at secure salary jobs with Land O'Lakes corporate or maybe equipment dealers instead of taking on multi-million dollars in farm debt for what looks like a structurally handicapped business.
It is a completely rational economic choice for them to make, even if it feels heartbreaking for the retiring generation watching the farm legacy potentially end.
Absolutely rational. If the business is starkly designed, through no fault of your own, to only achieve thin margins, why would you shoulder the immense debt burden and the 247 demands of farming? It's a tough sell.
So if the current structural leakage continues, where is this heading? The long view, based on current trends and projections, is frankly sobering.
Yeah, the numbers aren't pretty.
USDA data shows we've plummeted from over 70,000 dairy farms back in 2003
70,000.
to only about 26,500 today.
That historical rate of loss is just staggering when you think about it. And the projections don't offer much relief, do they?
Not really. Marin Bozic at the University of Minnesota, his modeling projects that if current structural disadvantages persist,
If nothing changes.
we could drop to between 17,000 and 20,000 operations by 2035.
17 to 20,000. That means losing another quarter to a third of our remaining dairies in just over a decade.
It's a massive potential loss, and critically, the loss isn't going to be evenly distributed across the country.
No, this is where regional disparity is projected to accelerate dramatically.
Traditional dairy states in the Northeast, they could see losses over 50 to 60% of their remaining farms.
50 to 60%.
Yeah.
Gone.
The upper Midwest might drop 40 to 55%.
Yeah.
These are the areas dominated by those crucial mid-sized family operations, the 200 to 1,000 cow dairies.
The backbone. But the large-scale western and southern states, they keep growing. They keep absorbing the volume.
Right.
This is the brutal truth of economics of scale. At the 3,000 plus cow scale, you have lower per unit fixed costs, better risk distribution. It allows them to sometimes absorb these competitive disadvantages better than a mid-scale 300 to 1,000 cow dairy.
That $90 to $100 per cow loss we talked about, it's an existential threat to the mid-size operation because it eats up their entire potential margin.
Wipes it out.
But it's just a significant inconvenience, maybe a controllable cost factor for the mega dairy that can operate on sheer volume efficiency.
Bozic's modeling emphasizes that these trade-related factors are accelerating consolidation by an estimated 15 to 25%, beyond what natural market evolution would dictate.
That's a key point.
Look, consolidation due to technology, genetics, better management, that's always going to happen. It's part of business evolution.
Yeah.
But this accelerated loss, it's driven by distortion, not necessarily superior farming or efficiency on the part of the survivors. It's basically a policy failure leading to unnecessary farm loss. We're losing good farms because the game is rigged.
But there is a powerful contrarian lesson here, something that should give us hope and maybe some guidance.
Okay, I like hope. What is it?
The U.S. apple producers, they faced similar, really aggressive Chinese subsidy competition a few years back. It threatened to swamp their global market share.
Right, I remember that. Apples were getting hammered.
They got organized. They documented the economic harm precisely, farm by farm, region by region, and they advocated relentlessly for trade remedies.
And that led to the implementation of Section 301 tariffs, right?
Exactly. For those unfamiliar, Section 301 refers to a section of the U.S. Trade Act. It basically allows the U.S. Trade Representative to investigate and, if warranted, retaliate against unfair foreign trade practices. It's a powerful policy mechanism we already have.
A tool in the toolbox. And the result for apples.
Within 2 years of implementation, U.S. apple exports to key Asian markets recovered by nearly 30%.
30% recovery, that's huge.
It leveled the playing field just enough for efficiency and quality to win again. It proves that policy can, in fact, change the trajectory and potentially prevent this projected 25-33% loss of our dairy farms. It's not inevitable if we fight back smart.
Okay, so knowing all this, the structural disadvantage, the hidden cost, the potential policy solution, what are producers actually doing right now to survive? What strategies are working on the ground?
The source material suggests 3 primary strategies are emerging, and they are not mutually exclusive. People are trying different combinations.
Okay, what's strategy 1?
Strategy 1 is what we call the make the scale decision. Basically, if you are between, say, 500 and 1,000 cows, You're currently in the most vulnerable crosshairs financially.
The squeeze zone.
Exactly. Some producers in that zone are aggressively borrowing, leveraging up to scale past 1,500 or maybe 2,000 cows. They're essentially betting that sheer volume can overcome the per-cow subsidy impact.
That's an immense gamble, though. You are leveraging your balance sheet to the absolute max to survive a hostile market,
Betting on the eventual recovery of trade policy.
while relying purely on economies of scale to survive the meantime. That's high risk, high reward. A lot of sleepless nights there.
Absolutely. But there's a necessary, often painful flip side to that decision. Choosing an orderly exit while you still have equity left in the operation.
Getting out while the getting's good, so to speak.
The Pennsylvania dairyman put it bluntly, and I want to reflect on the emotional weight of this decision for a moment. He said, I can get $1,500 per head in an orderly sale today. Wait 3 years if margins stay compressed and the bank gets nervous. Maybe it's $800 in a fire sale.
Oof, that's a huge difference.
That $700 per head difference translates to a $350,000 difference on just 500 cows. So making that strategic exit becomes a valid, hard-headed business decision, even though it's gut-wrenching. It's forced by external policy.
Yeah, that's not a business decision you want to make. It's a legacy decision forced upon you.
Yeah.
Okay, what's strategy 2?
The second strategy is finding premium markets. We see operations working hard to capture certified organic, A2A2, or specific grass-fed premiums, trying to build a margin big enough to simply ignore the subsidized conventional commodity market.
Trying to find a niche outside the main battlefield. I appreciate the Vermont organic producer example they cited, but man, it shows how demanding this path is.
It's not easy.
They faced 18 months of disrupted cash flow during the transition, over $280,000 in market development costs, and they're capped at 400 cows due to pasture availability and certification requirements.
It works for them because they are close to major consumer hubs like Boston,
Right.
That allows them to actually demand and get that premium price.
Location.
Yeah.
But USDA data confirms this path is only viable for maybe 10 to 15% of operations nationally. You need the right land, the right resources, the right climate, and critically the right location near willing consumers. It's not a solution for everyone.
Definitely not. Which brings us to the third strategy, which is potentially the most powerful because it helps everyone, regardless of size or location, getting organized and speaking up.
Ah, the advocacy route.
Yes. Producers are moving away from just generic complaints, milk prices stink. They're using real hard data to document the specific economic harm these trade policies are causing.
Because generic complaints don't move policy, do they?
Not at all. Specific spreadsheets, lost contract documents, regional impact studies, that's what gets attention.
The Wisconsin Dairy Business Association is the perfect example of effective organization here.
Absolutely. They aggregated member data showing over $45 million in annual trade-related losses across their membership. $45 million.
When you walk into a congressional office with $45 million in documented economic harm impacting their constituents, people listen. Policy attention follows fast.
And we saw the immediate success back in Michigan, connecting back to that case study. Producers armed with documentation of lost contracts, the specific price impacts on their milk checks. They met directly with Congress.
Laid it all out.
And they secured co-sponsorship for trade enforcement legislation within 3 months. 3 months.
That proves it right there. Specific, actionable, aggregated data is the single most important tool farmers have right now to fight this structural problem. You got to organize and bring the proof.
Okay, let's unpack this and get to the actionable insights. Let's make this real. You finished morning milking, you're driving to the feed store, focused on what matters right now for your operation. What are the 3 things you absolutely need to know from this deep dive?
All right, 3 takeaways. The first thing you need to do, like this week, is document your pressure. You need to gather data that proves your struggle is structural, not just operational mismanagement.
Document your pressure. Okay, what do you mean by that, practically speaking? What does the bank actually need to see? How do you document it?
Okay, first, talk to your local farm credit or your lender immediately. Tell them what's going on. The source material shows that several bankers inform the researchers they are much more flexible with loan covenants, maybe offering extensions or refinancing, when producers can demonstrate that documented market distortions are the primary driver.
So things like specific commodity price suppression numbers for your region or known contract losses by your co-op.
Exactly. Prove it's the market, not just you having a bad year with high somatic cell counts or poor feed conversion. But more importantly, don't go it alone. Work with your neighbors, your local producer groups. Aggregate specific data on contracts lost or price impacts across multiple farms.
Power in numbers.
Absolutely. 10 farms speaking together with unified data carry exponential weight compared to 10 individual complaints. Gather those co-op loss notices, find specific regional market analysis reports that show the price spread between U.S. and EU product in key export markets. Build a case file.
That's brilliant advice. Use the documented structural problem as a shield, or at least leverage with your lender. Okay, now, medium term. What's the strategy for the next 3 to 6 months as you maybe prepare for year-end review?
Rethink your break-even analysis. This is crucial. When you're evaluating your operations' financial health, run 2 detailed break-even scenarios.
2 scenarios.
Yeah. Scenario 1, under current subsidized conditions, the reality we live in now. Scenario 2, assuming potential trade improvements. What if you got back just part of that lost margin?
So maybe gaining back just, say, $0.20 per hundred.
Exactly. Something modest but meaningful. If your farm is struggling now, but the numbers show it would be profitable with those modest price improvements, then you know the problem is primarily structural, not operational.
Okay, and knowing that?
Knowing that frees you up mentally and strategically. You can focus your energy on policy advocacy, on long-term capital planning, rather than constantly tearing apart management practices that might actually be perfectly fine or even excellent.
That analysis alone could change a farmer's entire outlook from feeling defeated to feeling strategic. That's powerful. Finally, looking long-term, what's the positioning strategy for the next year or two, especially regarding major capital investments?
Investment modeling has to become mandatory, non-negotiable. Do not approve a major investment, a robotic system, a new barn, a major manure system upgrade, unless you model 3 distinct financial scenarios for it.
3 scenarios for every big purchase.
3. Scenario 1, baseline, using current depressed prices. Scenario 2, partial improvement, maybe assuming a plus $0 under $7 rate price lift through initial trade action. And scenario 3, normalized pricing, projecting a plus $1.40 total improvement, assuming full policy success eventually happens.
And the rule is?
Only proceed with investments that pencil out, that work financially in at least 2 of those 3 scenarios. This ensures you are making resilient investments that don't depend entirely on the status quo remaining terrible forever, but also don't bet the farm on policy changing overnight. It builds in resilience.
That's a very practical risk management approach for capital spending in this environment.
Excellent.
This has been a massive deep dive into a really difficult topic, hasn't it? And the final provocative thought I want to leave you with goes back to that old-timer quote we started with.
Yeah.
Managing weather, disease, and market cycles is dairy farming. That is what you sign up for. It's part of the job description.
It is.
But competing against foreign treasuries, against government policy designed to undercut you, that's not something you fix just by working harder or buying better genetics. This fight is bigger than your fence lines. This is about whether your farm town keeps its feed mill, its vet clinic, its school, its tax base, the whole rural infrastructure.
It truly is about the whole ecosystem. But the good news, the hopeful note, is that policy can change the trajectory. Texas A&M modeling suggests that if trade adjustments similar to those achieved for the apple producers are successfully implemented for dairy,
if we can get those Section 301 actions, we could see initial price improvements starting in maybe 12 to 18 months, leading to more comprehensive relief in 2 to 3 years.
That's not instantaneous, but it's a realistic timeline for policy impact.
And that relief could preserve several thousand dairy operations through 2035. Farms that would otherwise be lost purely to this structural distortion. It's worth fighting for.
Absolutely worth fighting for. This has been another deep dive from the Bullvine Podcast. If this kind of analysis helps your operation, head over to www.thebullvine.com. We've got more articles that tell you what's really happening in dairy. No BS.
And seriously, subscribe wherever you get your deep dives, your podcasts. We're releasing insights twice weekly now, and trust me, you don't want to miss what we've got coming next week. We're digging into the surprising correlation between somatic cell count and equipment financing terms, and how lenders are starting to use that data against you in ways you might not expect.